Happy New Year, everyone. My name is Josh Jones, and today we're going to learn how to connect a cloud environment such as AWS to your home network using site-to-site VPN. Now, given that many organizations have now transitioned to work from home, I thought this might be helpful to create a video to demonstrate a secure way to connect your cloud environment using something like a site-to-site VPN. So in this video, I'm going to demonstrate setting up an AWS site-to-site VPN connection with my Ubiquiti Dream Machine Pro firewall that I have installed here at my house. And as usual, if you find this video helpful, please leave me a comment below and let me know. So without further ado, let's get started. Let's take a few moments and review the architecture that I put together for this demo. On the right-hand side, you have my home office. For this demo, you have the home subnet of 192.168.10.0/24 subnet. Within that subnet, you have my PC with an address of 192.168.10.232. This customer gateway we will cover on the VPN configuration portion within the AWS Management Console. But for clarity, this is my UniFi Dream Machine Pro firewall. On the left-hand side, you have the AWS environment. Within that AWS environment, you have the management VPC that I configured. And that VPC has a subnet of 172.16.0.0/23. The /23 can be divided into 2/24 networks. The first subnet is here on the left-hand side. It's the DMZ/public subnet. It's using an IP address space of 172.16.0.0/24. Within this subnet, you have the Bastion host. The Bastion host has a public IP address assigned of 34.207.248.22. and a private IP address of 172.16.0.56. On the right-hand side, you have the second subnet, which is the private subnet, and it's using the address space of 172.16.1.0/24. And in this private subnet, you have the internal server with a private IP address of 172.16.1.88. And then you have representation of a VPC route table. Again, we'll cover what that is when we get to the AWS VPN configuration, as well as the virtual private gateway. And then by this representation of this red dotted line, that is representative of the site-to-site VPN tunnel between the two. Now, when we get done establishing the site-to-site VPN tunnel, I should be able to ping the 172.16.1.88 address, which is assigned to the internal server. The purpose of this site-to-site VPN tunnel is to allow my home PC with direct connection to this internal server so I don't have to go through this Bastion host. To prove it, if I do ping 172.16.1.88, apologies for the typo, as you can see, I'm getting a request timeout. And that is simply because the VPN tunnel is not established. We'll first configure the VPN connection on the AWS side. Let's get that process started. There's a few things that we need to do on the AWS side to configure the site-to-site VPN. So in order to do that, we're logged into the AWS Management Console and we go into VPC. And then on the left-hand side, we scroll down to the section called Virtual Private Network, VPN. Now there's a few different things that we need to configure under this section. We're going to start off by configuring a customer gateway. So in order to create a customer gateway, all we need to do is come in here and click the Create Customer Gateway button, either here or here. Now recall from our earlier discussion, the customer gateway is the firewall at your remote location. So this is the device that AWS is going to establish the site-to-site VPN tunnel with. And in my case, we are telling AWS to connect to the customer gateway, which is my Ubiquiti Dream Machine Pro. So in order to configure that information, we need to click here for Create. All right, I've got all the fields filled out now, starting with the first field of name. You can assign it any name that you want. And in my case, I just called it home-cgw for customer gateway abbreviated. For this demo, we are going to choose static. Here is my public IP address for my Ubiquiti firewall at home. For privacy purposes, I have this information blurred out. For certificate ARN, leave that blank. Device field, this is optional. Click this Create Customer Gateway button, and that's it. All right, the second thing we need to do is come under the Virtual Private Network section and click on the Virtual Private Gateway. So when we create a Virtual Private Gateway by clicking the button, we give it a name. For the ASN, we are going to leave it at the default value, create virtual private gateway. There is one more step that we need to take, and that is, if you can see under here, the state is detached. And what we need to do is attach this virtual private gateway to our management VPC. So in order to do that, we come up here, make sure this is selected, come up to Actions, Attach to VPC, select the drop-down button, and select the management VPC. And this would be your VPC that you want to create the site-to-site VPN connection between. And to finish this process, you just click the Yes, Attach button. This is going to take several minutes for it to attach. Sometimes it's very quick, and other times it takes a few minutes. You can click the Refresh button here, and we can actually see that it now changed to an attached state. Third step that we need to do is go back under this Virtual Private Network VPN, and we need to click on Site-to-Site VPN Connections. And in order to create the Site-to-Site VPN connection, we just need to click the button. And again, I'm going to pause this video, fill out all the fields, and come back and explain each field that we need to complete here. All the fields are filled out. Let's review which ones that I filled out. The first field is the name tag. Again, this can be anything that you define. The target gateway type is virtual private gateway. All you need to do is for virtual private gateway, you just need to click the drop down and select the virtual private gateway that you just configured. Next, you need to select the customer gateway. And in our case, we configured the customer gateway already, so we choose existing. Customer gateway ID, just click the drop down and select the customer gateway that you previously configured. Under routing options, you have two options: dynamic, which requires BGP, and you have static. Select the radio button next to static, and then when you do that, the next section that's going to come up is static IP prefixes. So this is simply the network that Amazon needs to connect to. And so this is my home network that Amazon needs to connect to. If you have multiple networks on your home network, you would populate each one of those networks under this section. So, again, if you had 192.168.20.0/24, you would just click this Add Another Rule, and you would fill out that information until you're done. For the tunnel inside IP version, you're going to select IPv4 in most cases. Under the tunnel options section, I'm going to let Amazon generate the information for me, and I'm going to show you how to download a VPN configuration file. And for the advanced options for Tunnel 1, you can edit those or leave blank. We're going to leave it blank to keep it simple, and then clicking the button. This is going to take another several minutes, and it could take up to 10 to 15 minutes. So you have a state of pending. While we're waiting for this, let's go ahead and click the download configuration. And this is the information that Amazon AWS configured for us. Now, what's really neat about this is that this configuration is a text file. It has all the VPN information in it. And you can see here that under vendor, you have multiple different options for different vendor types. In this case, if you selected Cisco Systems, you could look at and see there's an ASA 5500 series firewall running 8.2 for the code. You could select an ISR series router running 12.4. There is no option for Ubiquiti. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this generic option here and then click download. And then I'm going to close this window. I'm going to click the refresh icon here, and I can still see that it is in a pending state. So I'm going to pause the video and come back when it is ready. Okay, we are back. As you can see that the state changed from pending to available. There's a few things that we want to verify before we move to the next screen. Under here with the details section, you can see a lot of useful information like the type of VPN, which is an IPsec VPN. We can also see that the customer gateway address, and again, for privacy's sake, I blurred out my public IP address to my Ubiquiti Dream Machine Pro, my firewall at home. But this is where you could quickly take a quick glance and see what public IP address is assigned to your firewall at home. The other useful section is this tunnel details tab here. As we can see, there's 2 VPN tunnels that AWS configures automatically. You can see the outside IP address for each of the VPN tunnels, and you can see the status of the VPN tunnels. Right now, the status shows down for both VPN tunnels. That is because we have not configured the site-to-site VPN on the Ubiquiti Dream Machine Pro firewall. One other quick thing to note is that for this demo, I'm only going to configure 1 tunnel on my UniFi Dream Machine Pro firewall, and that will be this first tunnel here. So when we get done with that, this status will change from down to up, but this second tunnel will remain down because we are not going to configure a second tunnel. What this would be useful for is if you have a secondary firewall, maybe in an HA, a high availability configuration, and you want to create some redundancy or some HA between your data center, you could do that by configuring 2 separate VPN tunnels. The next thing that we need to do is, since we're using static routing, so if you remember previously, we configured static routing instead of dynamic routing. We need to do one more step and go into route tables, select the VPC that you need to configure this for. Then if we verify the routing table for this VPC, we can see that there's a couple of routes in here. The first one is 172.16.0.0/23, which is the local route. And then we have a default route of quad 0/0. This is our route out to the internet via the IGW, or the internet gateway, right? In order for us to finish this process, we need to come under here, this route propagation tab. And then you can see here for virtual private gateway. Again, that virtual private gateway is what we just previously configured. You can see it listed here, and there is a no under propagate. So we need to change this to yes. And in order to do that, we need to click the edit route propagation and simply select the checkbox here and then click save. What this is going to do is when the VPN tunnel comes up, there is going to be a third route listed in here of 192.168.10.0. In order for that route to be installed in the routing table, the VPN tunnel must be established. If it's not established, you will not see a route in here. So that's all that we need to do on the AWS side. And now what we're going to do is configure the VPN information on my Ubiquiti Dream Machine Pro firewall. Now that we are logged into the UniFi Dream Machine Pro, let's take a look at how simple it is to configure the site-to-site VPN connection. Go into Settings, come in here to the Networks section, click on Add New Network. Got all the necessary fields populated with information, starting with the first field of name. Again, this can be any name that you want. For VPN type, you select site-to-site VPN. The VPN protocol is manual IPsec instead of OpenVPN. We'd want to enable this VPN tunnel. So when we click create for this VPN tunnel, it will be enabled automatically. The remote subnets, we need to define the remote network. And that remote network is 172.16.1.0/24. If we wanted to have a second network in here, we could do 172.16.2.0/24, etc. You get the point there. The route distance is default. The interface is my WAN interface. And I actually have two different interfaces. I have WAN and WAN 2. Now, obviously, your situation may vary. I have two different internet service providers, and I want to build the site-to-site VPN tunnel using my primary internet connection, which is via the WAN connection. The peer IP address is the Amazon VPN Gateway that we previously configured. The local WAN IP, and again, for privacy's sake, I have blurred this IP address out, but this is what your public IP address is. The pre-shared key generated by AWS. The IPsec profile is custom for key exchange version, which is IKE version 1. The encryption is AES 128. The hash is SHA-1. And the IKE Diffie-Hellman or DH group is 2. And the ESP Diffie-Hellman group or DH group is also group 2. PFS, perfect forward secrecy, we want to make sure that that is enabled. Dynamic routing, we want to disable. So just click that and it will disable that. Now, some of you may be wondering where I actually got all these settings. If you recall from earlier, I downloaded the VPN configuration in the AWS Management Console. Let me show you what that VPN configuration text file looks like. Here is the VPN text file that I downloaded when I was going through the steps, the step-by-step VPN configuration within AWS. Essentially what you're doing is you're just coming through here and you're populating the information accordingly. I'm not going to go through every one of these, but now you get the gist of where you get that information from. In order to finish the Ubiquiti site-to-site VPN, all we need to do is click Apply Changes. So let me click that. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to verify connectivity between AWS and my home network. All right, as we do our testing, let's refer back to the architecture that we discussed at the beginning of this video. For testing purposes, we're going to issue the ping command as well as see if we can SSH into this internal server. There is one additional thing that we need to do. We need to go into the security group of this internal server and add a rule, or actually a couple of rules, in order to allow my ping. All right, now that we're logged into the AWS Management Console, we need to go into the security group to add those two rules that I previously discussed. On the left-hand side for instances, we're actually going to scroll down on the left-hand side under Network and Security. There's a section called Security Groups. Click on Security Groups. Go to the internal-server-sg. If we look at the inbound rules, edit inbound rules, and we just need to add a couple. The first one we're going to do is allow all ICMP IPv4. For testing purposes, you can just do all ICMP, which is what I'm going to do. The source is my home network, 192.168.10.0/24. And I need to add one additional rule, and this is going to be for SSH. And again, this is going to also be from 192.168.10.0/24. So now we have the ICMP for ping and the SSH. Click on Save Rules. Let's go back to our architecture and do some ping tests and SSH. As the final step that we need to take is just to do some basic connectivity tests now that the site-to-site VPN is established between AWS and my home network. We're going to try to ping the internal address of 172.16.1.88. We should be able to connect directly from my home PC directly to the internal server. So let's go ahead and try to ping the server at 172.16.1.88. We can see that the ping is working. If we log into that internal server, let's see if we can SSH into it. All right. This is the AWS server. So I am now on the console of internal-server. If I can try to ping 192.168.10.232, which is my home PC. Now I have bidirectional communication. It's time to wrap things up. Now we can see that we can ping from my home network to the internal server at the IP address of 172.16.1.88. And that's all we need to do in order to test the VPN connection between AWS and my home network.